when you were actually talking about what happened in Taj while in 2008, I think a lot of memories came back to a lot of us. We may have lost friends or we may have had people out there. And one sec, technology always does this to me. So. Wonderful. And I was telling Prashant that, the Tata Group as such is one such group where it really takes care of its people. Like you raised a very pertinent question. How do you train or get learning and development in somebody who is willing to lay down his life even though it's not in any services contract manner? And that fact was represented by both Vikram and Prashant. You see, they walk down to you and you still speak from the street. So that's the difference between done and not done it. Okay, just a quick one. I think even without this, I'll do something. If this group can split onto any side, a small exercise, I don't need the center table, just for a couple of minutes. It's a little important because HR is often a misunderstood function, so I'm just trying to, though I do not represent the function organically in my organization, it's just a minute, you can go back to your seats once we're done with this. Somebody from there has to self-nominate, can the group nominate one person from that side, the left side of the table, or if one person would like to turn up for the center? Somebody who of course represents the HR function in his or her organization. Quickly, because Vikram is not going to keep that as 15 plus or whatever. Wonderful. And Godiva here, is that good? In about 30 seconds, I'll ask you to define what you think is talent. And starts now.
As simple as it, if you put in a natural way, is someone who has
a great voice word, yes.
Yeah. Someone who has obviously performed very well on a consistent basis and reliably, at the same time has potential to move up. So, in a very classical sense, that's talent basically.
Okay, and you, ma'am. The mic, please. Quickly, if you can have it.
I would say that talent would be a person's, the most important essence that could define him or her, that could tell others about what a person is best at.
So I'm a little confused, but can the room say, did she agree to what she said or she did not agree to what she said?
No, it's completely subjective to everyone.
No, HR is very subjective. So that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah.
Did you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
This is not what I expected. I'll plan something. But anyways, okay. See, this is something I'm sure all of you understand what TGG-G means, correct? Wonderful. It says talent going on. Fair enough. So, see, my earlier speakers talked about L&D, how critical it is and how the CEO needs to play a very important and a critical role as far as an organization is concerned. I'll try and move a step ahead and say, okay, we've got a great CEO who understands L&D. So what next? And that's where this presentation stems from. I think as individuals, I think very importantly, do we first even recognize talent? And that's why I tried to split the room into two and get contradicting views. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Both of them said the same thing. But yes, one thing I'm sure you would agree is talent is relative. Because what may work in your organization or at my house might not work in somebody else's organization and somebody else's house. But it has to be relevant. I think that's very critical when you're doing talent management or understanding talent. That though it's relative, it has to be very relevant. And that's where sometimes, in our haste to recruit talent, in inverted commas, we sometimes miss the very basics of, is it relevant to the organization and to the industry that I represent? Because I got talent. I recruited somebody fresher, somebody from competition, somebody from an agnostic field. Doesn't make a difference. Is it relevant? So in this haste to get to that small pool of talent which exists in this country and beyond, sometimes we do not really take into account, and this is not a flag on anybody, but is it relevant to my industry? Is it relevant to my business? Is it relevant to the goals that the organization has? Can that person see forward 5 years from now? More importantly, what happens is we also, if you look at the last line, it says that fewer than 1/10 of Indian companies are actually any good at managing talent. And we talk about attrition and talent moving away, going beyond the country. So that's typically what that happens. When we do nothing, and here I will keep Tata's aside, they do a lot of things. Talent moves. I think you lose talent simply because most of the time you recruited them, but since they were not relevant at your recruitment stage, you are unaware of what to do with them. So you have attrition, you can't give them career goals, you can't even tell them that what they're going to do in the next 3 years, and so you start losing talent. The very talented you recruited 2.5, 3 years ago. So critical, even at an L&D level, is when I'm recruiting somebody, I think as Prashant pointed out, it doesn't need to be that he or she is the first in his class or whichever department or field he or she comes from. I think it's very important to understand whether that talent is relevant to my organization's goals. And then he might be 13th in his class or her class, but that is relevant to my organization's goal. And yes, we will be speaking about Reliance because I am not from the HR function, so I do not have too much knowledge about HR practices globally. But I can always tell you what we've done very successfully at Reliance and how it has made a difference in our lives and in the lives of the employees. Our philosophy is very clear. That when we bring in people, as I said, we are very sure about our recruitment process at the onset. The talent that we get in, people that we get in are very relevant to the organization's goals and the ethics that the organization stands for. This helps in the longer run because the goals of the individual and the organization are on the same line, though they are not in parallel tracks. How did we do that? It wasn't easy. There are two things that we rely heavily on, L&D being one of them. We are all aware what happened between the years 2008 and 2009. Some brothers in one part of the country did something the world had to suffer. So a lot of organizations said, no, L&D, training, it's a cost. Let's then put that cost on the back seat and let's focus on something else. Let's cut cost. Our CEO, Mr. Srinivasan, had a very different thought approach. He said the market is such, and we're in the lending business, it was not a very good time to lend at that point of time. And we had a fair number of people, even though we're still a very small organization. We had 965 people in 2008, 2009. So what do you do with 965 people if they're not going out and selling loans in the market? We invested 9 months in learning and development. 9 months when everybody said, let's cut L&D. We said we've got nothing to do, so let's spend a lot of time on L&D. So when 2009 and 10 and 10 and 11 happened, when people were looking at attrition, we had none. Because we took care of them when there was a lot of retrenchment across the globe because people had nothing to do. So that was our CEO's way of looking at a situation which some people call adversity. We turned it into an opportunity, we gave L&D a lot of value, and when people moved on, people at Reliance stayed back. Another very key important factor at Reliance is we've all heard of entrepreneurs. You know, this country is made of very few salaried vis-a-vis the number of entrepreneurs. How many people of you in this room have ever wanted to do something on your own, but somehow not, really not understood how do I get there? Who helps me with my funds? How do I make my business plan? Do I pitch it to a venture capitalist? Will the banks lend me money? Will some angel fund come and fund me? Has anybody ever thought of doing something on their own? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's where Reliance Commercial Finance has played a very critical role in a lot of employees' life. We build intrapreneurs, not entrepreneurs, because they're outside the system. So how do we do that, and how have we done that? This started in the year 2011. We built an innovation council. Now, what was the job responsibility of the council? Well, of course, when Vikram was talking about, he was talking about a sponsor. So our CEO became the sponsor of this particular council. We said it is very difficult, very easy for somebody to go out in the market and say, I pick up a loan. And we think that the credit about 370, 380 people contribute to such ideas. Now what happened to these ideas? They were shortlisted. The biggest impetus that this project received was because we said that if a project is selected and you go out and sell those loans in the market, if there is a loss, the organization bears that loss. But if there is a profit, you are part of that profit. So look at an enterprise. entrepreneur who's outside, if he loses money, it's his money. Either money that is put from his own pocket or is borrowed from the external market. And here, there are a team of employees working together as a team, creating a proposal, creating a product that's sellable in the market with no loss onus on themselves if it's selected. So what happens? There were 17 products which were finally selected, which means 105 people became entrepreneurs. Each project had a target number based on feasibility and how its acceptance in the market is. So imagine what that did to the organization. People are their own bosses. They are running their own businesses. They understand how difficult things are and how easy things are at one end. And this year, when we did that 17 has actually become 23. Because these entrepreneurs lived very difficult for that 1 year. Because when they had to convince others to buy their own product, it was not easy. It's very easy refuting somebody else's theory. But when you're selling your own, it's that bit difficult. So they lived the life of an entrepreneur within the organization. And I'll show you a small little sheet at the end of the presentation if you have the time. A lot of people moved up in 1 year on the band of E's and 6's and 7's and 8's and 9's. And at a certain supervisory level, the year 12-13 saw 0% attrition. The simple reason being, here is an opportunity for me to prove my worth, not just doing what I have been doing or what I've been recruited to do, but going out of my job role, creating a product for a very large organization, being able to sell that in the market and reaping the benefits. Now, talent management is not just about paying a hefty compensation. Talent management, learning and development is giving them another opportunity to do something more beyond what they've been traditionally doing. Because I don't know how many of you are in the BFSI sector, but it's like, okay, I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years, so this is the way it's done. So the Innovation Council challenged those very beliefs. That the guys who said this is the way it's done had to then go actually and do turncoat debate, if you have heard that term, and say this is not the way it's done, this is the way it's done. So there is learning, because you're an entrepreneur, you can do things beyond just what you've been doing for the last 10 to 15 years. People stay back because they believe there is an opportunity to grow. And more importantly, what we believe also, that we are creating entrepreneurs within the organization. We are managing talent, we are creating talent, which in its own way allows them to bloom even outside the organization. So it's not, at Reliance we don't say that, okay, we've created talent, we're going to straitjacket you for the next 5 years. If there are opportunities beyond the organization, growth which is inorganic, which can't come to you in this organization in 365 days, but there is an opportunity outside because of what you've done in the last year, please go. There's a world outside Reliance, it's a large world, and we're sure you can get into that and add value. So this is the only road we travel. And I just picked up this quote from somewhere which I was reading. That imagine if people who cook in this room, and I'm not just pointing out to the ladies, I'm sure some of the gents cook also, that there was a stove, where you're cooking, and something else comes up in between. And in Word you have this thing as save as. So imagine a world where you can save your cooked food that way, do something and come back. Now, that's innovation in a very different level. We still not reached there. We're working hard towards it. But that is how we see life at Reliance, that every day is doing something out of the ordinary. And even now, times are not good. I'm sure one of the CEO of Leapworld was talking to us in the morning and saying that last year, this forum saw close to 400 participants. This year there are roughly 200, which automatically means that, hello, all is not hunky-dory. Everybody's trying to do the little bit towards the economy. But even in that, we believe there's enough road for talent, enough scope for learning and development. And that's exactly what we're doing. So when times are tough within the organization, we actually spend more time on L&D because it helps us when times are easier. These very people who we train are the ones who give back a lot when times are better. So as we were saying, that it's not limited to only working in RCA. We create talent, we nurture them. There is enough of L&D, and one of the bigger things is they're allowed to go out. There are very few organizations who do that, and we are proud to be one of those that create talent and don't feel bad when they move on and add value to other organizations also. So talent retained not just within my organization, but talent as talent retained till somebody else tries to do it. And there are two more presentations, but I'm not sure I have that kind of time. So